All right, everybody. So I know that I have taken quite a few days off of streaming, and I feel so bad that I wasn't actively going live on a daily basis when this happened so I could cover it when it was fresh news. But as a Floridian lefty, I feel the need to cover this and celebrate it with you all if you are also Floridian lefties. Hell, you don't even have to be a Floridian lefty. Well, I'm not Floridian anymore. I'm from Florida, but, you know, I'm a Floridian at heart. I'm a Florida man at heart. And that is DeSantis, the shit-ass governor of Florida, dropping out of the presidential race in the Republican primaries, leaving Donald Trump to go up against Nikki Haley in New Hampshire. And obviously, Trump ran the fuck away with that, obviously. Everyone expected it. No one was expecting Trump not to absolutely take the dub, especially over DeSantis. DeSantis has no chance. At this point, everyone in the Republican Party is pressuring Nikki Haley to drop out because it's very obvious that Donald Trump is going to win, and from the Republicans' perspective, it is probably smartest to divert the rest of all of their attention to fighting against the Democrats and Biden, knowing that Trump is, you know, pretty much guaranteed to be their guy. Well, just is guaranteed to be their guy. However, I do still want to cover this, and I still want to talk about it because I have a special hatred for Ron DeSantis, being a Floridian myself, and I'd particularly love to revel in his failure. Governor Ron DeSantis suspended his Republican presidential campaign on Sunday, ending his 2024 White House bid just before the New Hampshire primary, while endorsing his bitter rival, Donald Trump. It is so funny watching him endorse Trump after multiple times saying he... My favorite is that one clip of Ron DeSantis saying that Donald Trump will attack any Republican that goes against him, but if they bend the knee and kiss the ring, I think he said, then he'll give them whatever they want, and he'll play nice with them. And he, like, talks shit about them and says that, and then he immediately does that. He did the thing that he called out people for doing with Trump, now that he has no way of, like, being against Trump and succeeding within the Republican Party. Absolutely hilarious. The decision leaves Trump and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley as the last major candidates remaining in the race ahead of Tuesday's New Hampshire primary. This is the scenario Trump's foes in the GOP have long sought, raising the stakes for this week's contest as the party's last chance to stop the former president who has so far dominated the race. But as some Trump critics cheered, DeSantis nodded towards Trump primary dominance and attacked Haley in an exit video he posted on social media. Oh yeah, can we find his exit video? Here, Ron DeSantis exit video. Yeah. Kiss the ring, Meatball Ron. Kiss the ring.
Greetings from Florida. The warmth of being home is a reminder why I've
Kiss
chosen
the
public
ring.
service. From joining the United States Navy and serving in Iraq, to representing the people in the U.S. Congress, and now serving as governor of Florida. And it reminds me why I decided to run for president, to fight for those who have been forgotten in this country. This is America's time for choosing. We can choose to allow a border invasion, or we can choose to stop it. We can choose...
Right now, obviously I'm going to have a whole segment about this later because it's led to a really big separate topic that's going on right now. Right now, the Republicans are hardcore leaning into the border. Is like the... So you know like the meme with the Wojak that's like an NPC and you take one chip out and you put another chip in? The right like originally made that to describe the left getting mad about insert thing, but in reality it was just them getting mad about a thing and pretending like them discovering the left believing in a thing was the moment the left started believing in that thing out of nowhere and caring about that thing. Like, you notice that, right? Like, the right created that NPC meme to represent the left, like, jumping between things that it cares about. But the left 99.9% of the time has talked about and advocated for those things the entire time, and it was the right that suddenly turned it into a culture war topic, and a bunch of conservatives act like the second they became aware of this thing is when it started being a thing. Very, very interesting. But anyway, the meme got appropriated by the left. But imagine that. It's gone from being like critical race theory to being like trans people and like drag queen story hour. And then it ended up going to being like diversity and inclusion hiring or whatever was like the most recent like chip they put in their NPC heads. And now the most recent one is the border. Right now, conservatives and Republicans are desperately trying to convince Americans the border is under attack, it is not secure, and Biden is being anti-American by doing things such as ordering razor wire to be taken down off the fences in the border, and not allowing like the Texas National Guard to shoot immigrants on sight on the border. They're basically doing everything in their power to convince people that Texas should secede from the Union because of what Biden is doing. Not that it is going to secede, not that they are going to secede, but they are trying to convince as many people as possible that Texas should secede.
Reckless borrowing and spending, or we can choose to limit government and lower inflation. We can choose political indoctrination, or we can choose classical education. These
classical education. What he's referencing right now is Florida recently banning the teaching of advanced psychology, AP psychology, advanced placement psychology, in high schools. It's a college preparation class where you can get college credits before you go to college, so you can start college a little ahead if you take the right classes and you do well enough in high school and get ahead. It's just a nice thing that you can take to like get ahead if you plan to study psychology in college and you've done the work. You can just do that, right? The problem is AP psychology, as well as most nationally mandated curriculums, teach the truth and reality as far as like humanity has come to know it. And this includes the topic of gender and sex not being the same thing, the fact that sex is a bimodal distribution spectrum, as is gender being a spectrum, the fact that XY and XX chromosomes are not the only chromosome combinations. So they talk about the existence of intersex people and like AP psychology and stuff and how that affects people's psychology. All these topics the right believes are like indoctrination or whatever because they don't agree with it. They straight up banned the teaching of it in Florida, which effectively banned the teaching of AP psychology in Florida because for the class to be admissible for any sort of credit, you have to actually learn all of the curriculum. And with part of the curriculum being banned, it means they can't teach the class anymore. Well, they can't teach the class and make it worth taking for any form of credit now. So, yeah, no, they are already banning entire classes from certain states. In certain states, Florida being one of the best examples because of the talking points Ron DeSantis is pushing.
These choices are symptoms of the underlying struggle to ensure that constitutional government can endure and that Western civilization can survive. And we launched.
So something I've noticed is that conservatism, especially in the internet era, is Nazism in every way, shape, and form effectively. The only real difference is how much you hate minorities and how who you blame for the problems that you see. Because all right-leaning people at this point seem to agree online that, like, all of the major institutions that control, like, popular media, like movies, the prisons, the government, like, everything like that, the military, they either think they're controlled by, like, SJW, like, woke insiders who are trying to, like, take over whatever institution it is, or they're a full-on Nazi who believes it's the Jews doing exactly that. They all believe that there is a insidious takeover of any institution that, like, puts out anything they don't like. It's just whether or not they think it's the Jews that seems to be the line. And both of them, and then, like, how much they hate minorities. Like, your average conservative doesn't really like representation in media. They maybe don't hate gay people. They maybe don't hate black people. They maybe don't hate, trans people. But they definitely don't like seeing representation in media. And they'll definitely complain about it. And they'll definitely be put off by it. But that can escalate to outright, like, making mods for games where it, like, gets rid of all the women in the game, or it gets rid of all the non-white people in the game. This has happened before. There are people this dedicated who hate minorities this much. That is the reaction they have. Or like the cuts people make of like Marvel movies where there's no women, or the Star Wars no women cuts that people made online. Those are real, by the way, like fan cuts of these movies that don't have any women, or at least any women that are speaking in the scenes. There are a lot of people online in these communities that have, sort of ranging reactions. But at the end of the day, the difference between like a full-on neo-Nazi online and your average chud, as far as like the mechanisms through which they think their political opposition acts, are exactly the same. It's just the difference is whether or not they think their political opposition is just people with more progressive politics than them, period, or Jews. Like, is it woke people that have infiltrated everything and are taking over and ruining Western civilization? Or is it Jews that have taken over and are making everything woke and ruining Western civilization? Like, that is literally the line between conservative and Nazi at this point, on the internet at least.
Launch this campaign to bring accountability to government, regain sovereignty at our border, and restore sanity to our society. We cannot succeed as a country if we allow our nation to be invaded, our currency to be debased, our cities to crumble, and our kids to be indoctrinated.
Okay, cool. So, for starters, cities crumbling, you are against every single infrastructure spending bill. You don't believe in tax money going to infrastructure, so you don't... I assume you mean cities crumbling. He probably means, like, some moral thing, or he's just trying to fearmonger about, like, cities having crime because cities have more people and higher densities, so they obviously are going to have more crime. And most cities are more diverse, so they have a, like, tendency for Democrat leadership, so the Republicans try to rely on the higher crime rate that all cities have as a point against Democrats, as if Republicans running them wouldn't make things insanely worse. And then on top of that, you've got the idea that, like, America's being invaded, or that the American dollar's being defaced or debased or whatever. For one, most immigration is not coming over the border. Most illegal immigration, especially, is people overstaying work visas and green cards and whatnot. Like, they're not, like, walking over the border or, like, getting into a van with, like, a smuggler and going over the border. And the people who are getting smuggled into the country illegally are being done so in the vast majority of cases by human traffickers who have the resources to fly them into the country, boat them into the country, submarine them into the country, along with drugs and whatever else they want. They've also got paid off border guards on both sides of the border to let them in if they just want to go by like normal ground vehicle. The idea that there is this, like, caravan, like Donald Trump said back in the day that, obviously didn't exist, of illegal immigrants that are, like, winding their way up from South America through Central America, up through Mexico, and across the border and invading America is, like, a fantasy that conservatives who want to believe their little, like, mountain town in the middle of nowhere, like, is on the edge of being invaded by, like, a wall of brown people marching into the country, like some scene out of the Lord of the Rings. Like, they genuinely believe this. Like, Fox News has brainwashed these people into thinking that's the case. And, Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, a lot of those people rely heavily on that thought process, at least with the older people especially. The younger people are convinced that, despite knowing that's not the case, they think that the simple act of non-Americans, and especially non-white people immigrating, is bad because it dilutes the gene pool. Right? They think that there's going to be less white people, and they think that's a problem. There's going to be less white people having sex with white people and having white babies if there's more brown people to do that with instead. So they get super mad about immigration as well. But the argument that it hurts the economy is also just demonstrably false. The vast majority of economists agree that immigration, both legal and illegal, is a massive boost to our economy, and without it, our economy would be way worse off. Illegal immigrants, especially from south of the U.S.-Mexico border, commit far less crime than native-born Americans, as do their children. So first and second generation immigrants commit far less crime than native-born Americans do. Even white native-born Americans. I know a lot of conservatives try to reply, well, black native-born Americans are actually skewing those stats. So, if you just count white Americans against these immigrants, they actually commit more crime. It's like, okay, well, no, they don't actually. That's not even true. But yeah, like, once again, this is just another example of like the conservative establishment in the Republican Party being one word away from a Hitler speech. Like, he just has to say Jews, and it's a Hitler speech.
The DC elites who facilitated this mess do not care about...
If he just said Jews there instead of elites, it's a Hitler speech. Listen to the rest and just pretend he said Jews there, and it's a Hitler speech.
And they do not work for you. They work for themselves. They seek to accumulate power at your expense to pursue an agenda that is harmful to the American people.
So yeah, this is a Hitler speech, but he said elites instead of Jews. Like, that is how close the Republican Party is right now to just full-on Hitlerite.
Citizens do not serve politicians. It is the duty of politicians to serve you. Talk is cheap.
Really?
Actions speak louder than words.
Is that what Donald Trump does?
Reversing the decline of this nation requires leadership that delivers big results for the people we are elected to serve. I have a record of leading with...
I like how Donald Trump in one term couldn't save the decline of the nation or whatever. Like, the nation continued to decline under Trump, supposedly. And now, like, we need another term of Trump to stop the supposed decline of the nation. You know what's really sad? If Donald Trump wins as well, he is going to be able to take so much credit for one of the best economies America has ever seen. Biden's reforms economically have been really good. I've got a whole segment about it prepared for today that we're going to be going over about how Biden's policies have been insanely good and what positive impacts they've been having on the U.S. economy, and how it's had, unfortunately, no impact on people's polling on whether or not they like him. It's actually, despite that, his approval rating has been dropping because people are buying the idea that Biden being president is hurting the economy. It's not. These things just take time to like bear results, and by the time they do bear results, it tends to be when the next president is in office, and usually it's a president from a different party, the opposite party, the Republican Party, who ends up taking credit, right? Like, Bush fucked the American economy beyond recognition. Obama inherited that, fixed up the economy, and like the economy was like pretty fucked under Obama for a long time, but like 2012 to like 2016, it got a lot better, but it was still, not fantastic compared to pre-Bush. But Bush still oversaw a pretty good economy. And it was the results of that terrible economy didn't like show their face until I think Obama was already elected, because it happened in 2008 was when the housing market crash happened and we went into a big economic crisis. I was very young back then. I was like 9 when this happened, so correct me if I get any of this info wrong. But then from there, obviously Obama had to inherit that, spend an entire term dealing with that. Over the course of his second term, we saw a fair amount of healing happen, obviously. We saw a pretty significant low during the 2008 market crash, so obviously there was only up to go from there, realistically. But... people liked Obama a lot. Like, Obama had pretty high approval ratings. People liked him a fair amount. As far as like your average American median voter goes. The problem was Donald Trump came in and he was kind of a wild card. A lot of people just voted for Trump, not for the meme, but because he was an outsider. Not because he necessarily represented everything they believe in, but because they didn't like Hillary. They were tired of the same thing over and over again. They wanted something new. And I think that's what really gave Trump a lot of the oomph he needed to get there in 2016. And Donald Trump was able to oversee 4 years of a pretty strong economy because of 8 years of Obama. The economy that Trump was able to preside over up until COVID and his horrible mismanaging of it was pretty good. In the end half towards the end fifth with COVID, it got pretty bad, but most of that damage was inherited by Biden. And to this day, we're still recovering from COVID, and Biden is helping the U.S. economy recover from COVID at record speeds, at speeds that were very unprecedented. But people are still struggling. The Republicans are very successfully hearkening back to how good the Obama-era economy was under Trump, and convincing people that a Republican means a good economy and a Democrat means a bad economy. That's the fundamental distinguishing thing that the Republicans have relied on for so long. This false idea that when you elect a Republican, no matter how much you may dislike them, at least the economy will be good. They will run the country like a business, and they will make the country successful, and they'll make it make a lot of money. That, like, a lot of people genuinely believe that, despite the fact that, here, let's look at, which states pay in more than they take from the government. These people think that, like, they have been convinced that Republicans run the country like a business, and like they're super successful at making money and making sure that the country will, like, be financially successful with their budget allocations and everything. But if you look at, here's a CGP Grey chart he made, a chart from CGP Grey of states, and which states pay more into Washington than they receive, and which states receive more from Washington than they pay. And overwhelmingly, the states that receive more than they pay are Republican states. Like, hard red states. The exceptions are Texas and Florida, because those states have massive economies in and of themselves. Texas has oil and agriculture. Florida has agriculture, medical, and tourism. So, besides these two exceptions, the vast majority of these red states that are taking more money from the government to keep themselves afloat than they are giving to the government, actually making for the country, all Republican states. Hell, California, the state these people demonize constantly, has an economy on par with the nation of France. I believe the economy of California is stronger than that of the nation of France. That's insane to me. The idea that, like, Republican leadership means economic prosperity is a lie that they have desperately tried to convince the American people of, using the fact that most people don't understand national economics, that the effects of a president's policy decisions take time to bear any noticeable results in people's lives, and the fact that the Republicans have way more money to spend on spreading said lies and, like, ideas that Republican president means you have more money and you pay less taxes, for example. That's another lie they tell, that Republican president means less taxes. For who? They almost always raise taxes for the, like, middle and lower class people. And they do tax cuts across the board for, like, corporate tax cuts, and they reduce wealth taxes, and they reduce the brackets for tax brackets for wealthy people. So they cap it. So extremely wealthy people can have a massive amount of yearly income they have that isn't taxable. Or even then, they create loopholes or allow the existence and defend the loopholes that allow for really wealthy people to keep from having to pay taxes by investing their liquidity into investments, like physical investments like property or houses, like land is really just the best go-to. Some people invest in guns. Those are actually a pretty solid one. But if you invest in physical things and you find the right loopholes, like writing it off as a business expense, like, say, for example, this is a thing that a lot of rich people do if they own a business, is they'll buy, like, a really expensive, like, island resort house, and they will use it, quote unquote, as a business getaway. And that, like, once a year for a week, they'll, like, fly out, like, half the company to come stay in it and then use it as their own vacation house for the rest of the year. That makes it a business expense, though, and they can write that shit off on their taxes. That obviously should not be allowed. Republicans allow this. Churches, they make a shit ton of money. They should absolutely be getting taxed. Republicans make sure that does not happen. The idea that Republicans in power equals economic prosperity for the country or the state is, at a data level, untrue. But most people don't look at the data. They don't care. They hear a popular phrase or talking point and they go with it because they're willing to fill in a blank in their knowledge with misinfo, because to them, misinfo is better than not having any opinion on it at all.
With conviction, championing an agenda marked by bold colors, delivering on my promises, and defeating the people who are responsible for our nation's decline. That is the type of leadership we need for all of America.
The interesting thing is, by the way, the right nonstop plays victim about how the left is like against them having the freedom of speech or whatever, and yet these are the people who say we need to defeat those that are responsible for the decline of America. And that's how they talk about their political opponents. Like, the only time you can even get Democrats to come close to talking about Republicans in a way even close to as, like, angry and mean as this about Republicans is when they attempt a coup on the Capitol and try to oust the sitting officials that are trying to validate the electoral results. Like, that is the meanest Democrats have ever been about. Basket of deplorables is the meanest thing a Democrat has ever said about Republicans publicly. This is the nicest thing I've heard a Republican say about Democrats publicly.
Now, over the past many months, Casey and I have traveled across the country to deliver a message of hope that decline is a choice.
I don't know. It's just always interesting to me that, like, Republicans constantly operate under the idea that anyone who disagrees with them is, like, inarguably an enemy of the country that needs to be crushed and destroyed. Like, attacked, belittled, made fun of, just, they shouldn't be taken seriously, but they should also be destroyed and wiped out, and they should have no ability to gain power, to speak, to make their ideas known. They shouldn't be allowed to have movies or media or games that agree with their politics. Like, they say these things, and yet at the same time, they say their politics are the ones that are under attack. One of the core tenets of fascism is the idea that the enemy is simultaneously overwhelmingly powerful and that they are an imminent threat to the motherland and the state, while also being weak and a parasite that's making everyone weaker and is easy to destroy. It's a inherently contradictory idea, one inherent to fascism and one that happens to be shared by the Republican Party.
And that we can, in fact, succeed again as a nation. Nobody worked harder, and we left it all out on the field. Now, following our second place finish in Iowa, we've prayed and deliberated on the way forward. If there was anything I could do to produce a favorable outcome, more campaign stops, more interviews, I would do it. But I can't ask our supporters to volunteer their time and donate their resources if we don't have a clear path to victory. Accordingly, I am today suspending my campaign. I'm proud to have delivered on 100% of.
Does anyone have the clip of Ron DeSantis saying that Trump will add you to his circle if you kiss the ring? Does anyone have that clip of DeSantis saying that? I'd love to play it right before DeSantis does exactly that. Does anyone have that clip? I would love it. I would really appreciate it if anyone could send me that clip. Oh, it's so good. Here, I'll see if I can find it myself.
You can be.
Oh yeah, here's somebody who like clipped both clips together. Oh, this is great.
You can be the most worthless Republican in America, but if you kiss the ring, he'll say you're wonderful.
Trump is superior to the current incumbent, Joe Biden. That is clear.
All right, let's watch DeSantis kiss the ring.
Of my promises, and
So
I will
Trump
not
says he's
stop
wonderful.
now. It's clear to me that a majority of Republican primary voters want to give Donald Trump another chance. They watch his presidency get stymied by relentless resistance, and they see Democrats using lawfare this day to attack him. Well, I've had disagreements with Donald Trump, such as on the coronavirus pandemic and his elevation of Anthony Fauci. Trump is superior to the current incumbent, Joe Biden.
His elevation of Anthony Fauci. I love that, like, to this day, conservatives are, like, part of being Republican, part of being conservatives, being anti-vax. I remember the days back when being anti-vax was this, like, Facebook crazy thing to do, and everybody on the internet made fun of anti-vaxxers and made jokes about how, like, anti-vaxxer parent, here, let me show you your baby's new crib, and it's, like, the picture of SpongeBob pointing to, like, the coffin, saying get in. Like, that was the internet's overwhelming take on being anti-vax back in the day. But nowadays, it feels like you go online to any discussion about it, and it's roughly 50-50 anti-vax, pro-vax. Like, it's actually scary how many people have been, by political bias, have been moved to being opposed to, like, medical care, fundamentally, for themselves and their loved ones. I had a friend who literally had to sneak out of the house. He's an older guy. Like, he's not, he's not like a kid or anything, but he still lives with his family, which a lot of people in Gen Z do. And his family's like pretty anti-vax. He had to kind of like not sneak out, but like behind their back go get vaccinated, because if they found out, they would maybe not like kick him out or like do anything crazy, but they'd be pretty upset and they'd give him shit for it. So there are definitely people out there that are enforcing their anti-vax ideology on their family, and their family members who are vaccinated are hiding it because they don't want to cause strife within their family, because people who are anti-vax will call you an abuser if you vaccinate your kids. That kind of thing. And it's going to be a big issue going forward, with the Republicans having made being anti-vax part of their party line that you have to toe.
That is clear. I signed a pledge to support the Republican nominee, and I will honor that pledge. He has my endorsement because we can't go back to the old Republican guard of yesteryear, a repackaged form.
To be fair, like back in 2015, Donald Trump did, like what's crazy is back in 2015, the fact that Trump was anti-vax was a gotcha against him. Like, you would bring that up in a debate with a Trump supporter and they wouldn't be able to respond because being anti-vax was so unanimously seen as stupid. They wouldn't even defend it. They'd try to find a way to make like, oh, well, maybe people are just misreading him. So like the clips of Trump from like 2015, 2016 talking about how we need to like reduce the amount of vaccines that young kids and babies are getting, because it's like these needles these needles that they give these kids for these vaccines, these little babies, they're like a horse injection. It's crazy, these big needles that they're injecting these little tiny babies with. So yeah, like Donald Trump's been on the anti-vax train for a long time, but back in the day it was so unpopular, even Trump supporters wouldn't try to defend the anti-vax position. They'd try to make claims about how Trump was actually playing 4D chess and didn't mean it. Now they just outright accept, yeah, no, vaccines are evil and Fauci should be executed for being pro-vaccine and being head of the like CDC or whatever. Yeah, like they're just like absolutely batshit about it now, and it's not even a thing that like garners mass ridicule online like it used to.
Of warmed over corporatism that Nikki Haley represents. The days of putting Americans last, of kowtowing to large corporate.
Nikki Haley represents corporatism, but Donald Trump doesn't? But the Republican Party doesn't? Okay.
Of caving to woke ideology are
ideology.
I thank all of our passionate supporters who have stood by us through it all. That we had people volunteer to come to Iowa in the middle of a blizzard to knock on doors and make phone calls touched us dearly. No candidate had more thrown at him.
That Iowa primary election had record low voter turnout, by the way.
But no candidate had so many committed volunteers and staff. Finally, I want to thank my wife, Casey, and our kids, Madison, Mason, and Mamie. Casey's gone far above and beyond in her support for our campaign and for our cause. She's not only a great wife and mother, she's a great American who cares deeply about the future of the country.
Isn't his wife like his sister or something like that? Isn't he like in an incest marriage? That might have been a meme. I choose to believe it's true.
That our kids will inherit.
No one correct me.
Our kids have seen and done a lot on the trail, from playing on the famed Field of Dreams baseball site in Iowa to making their first snowman in New Hampshire. They are one of the reasons we fight so hard for what we believe in. Winston Churchill once remarked that success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts. While this campaign has ended, the mission continues. Down here in Florida, we will continue to show the country how to lead. Thank you, and God.
You know what I really hope? I really hope we get to see, like, the National Guard, or not National Guard, U.S., I guess the National Guard taken control of by Washington, like, have to, like, remove Ron DeSantis from his seat as governor. I feel like Ron DeSantis is inevitably going to attempt to trump attempted Trump when he can no longer be governor in Florida, and try to like do a mini Capitol riot, a mini Jan 6th in Florida to like maintain his power in the state. I actually think that's his plan. I think he just wants to be like mini Trump, and he tried to get above Trump himself, realized he couldn't do it, stepped down, learned his place, and kissed the ring, obviously. Now I think his main method is going to be to try to copy everything Trump did to get the same levels of success over a longer period. As he said, it's not over yet. You know, this is just the beginning of his political career getting big. In his view, at least. I honestly don't think DeSantis in like 8 years is going to be anyone that people are thinking about or talking about all that much. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't think DeSantis has a shot at the presidency after this. I don't think in like the next 2 election cycles for presidency, I don't think Republicans, unless insane shit goes down, I don't think Republicans have a chance at the presidency. That's part of why they're so desperate to win this one with Project 2025. The Republicans are betting or like really relying on the 2024 election being the last election America ever has. The idea for this election, like Donald Trump has been very open. His supporters are very open. His cabinet, or not cabinet, his campaign is very open, that if he wins, he is not leaving office. That is not the goal. None of his supporters believe that if he wins, he's leaving office. He doesn't believe that if he wins, he's leaving office. His cabinet picks, or not cabinet picks, his fucking campaign doesn't believe that if he wins, he's ever leaving office. The goal is to win and to do what he did in his first term to try to maintain his power 100 times over and 100 times more aggressively. The Democrats have shown clear weakness against the Republicans in their reaction to Jan 6. The Republicans now know there will be little to no consequences if they attempt another coup, but even harder, especially if they're able to come close to succeeding. There'll be little to no consequences. No matter how much violence occurs or how much death occurs, there'll be little to no consequences. They recognize that they effectively can just do that and get away with it if they win the presidency legitimately. So it's really, and they know that they do not have a chance of winning many more elections the more election cycles go by, the more young people hit voting age. We'll see. We'll see what happens. The Republicans, Trump, if he wins in 2024, like this year, their Project 2025 plan is basically to dismantle American democracy, to make it so he can't be impeached or convicted for any criminal charges whatsoever, and to make it, he's also talked about dismantling term limits as well. So we're really talking about some crazy possibilities here if Trump wins. At the very least, we're going to see him try some insane shit if he wins. Whether or not he'll succeed is a different question, but he's going to try it. He's going to try to destroy American democracy, and I think it's going to make Jan 6th look like a nothing burger if he wins.